Greetings, family. Welcome to the Grand Rising Collective. My name is Kyle Dixon, co-host, educator, and entrepreneur for 20 years. Grand Rising Collective's here is to cultivate greatness in ourselves and our community.
And my name is Kayode Bentley, co-host, educator, and entrepreneur for over 20 plus years. My contribution to Grand Rising Collective is to help cultivate that greatness in ourselves and the community through impactful discussions, seminars, and webinars with my co-host, Kyle Dixon.
Greetings, family. This is Kyle Dixon here with another episode of the Grand Rising Collective podcast, along with my co-host here, Kayode Bentley. Say what up to the people, Kayode.
What up to the people, Kayode? What up to the people, y'all? How you doing? We're here for another one. Okay, Kyle, I'm sorry.
Indeed. So we're here for another one with a special guest, a young brother who's doing some amazing things out in the world, especially in the industry of education and counseling and consulting. Mr. Mario Jovan Shaw. How you doing today, Mario?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here.
Indeed. We're happy to have you.
Yes.
Definitely happy to have you, Mario.
Indeed. So family, we're just gonna jump right in because this brother's doing some amazing things, and definitely want to have him on the podcast because he has a lot to share with us as far as what he's doing as far as in the Black male educational space, but also just in regard to having men of color in general in the education space and how we can retain brothers in the education space. I'm a Black educator. Kayode is a Black educator, and so we got another brother who also a Black educator. Right. So for this new year, new ideas, new beginnings, new thoughts, new strategies. So this brother's definitely on that. So Mario, give us a little background on who you are, like where you come from, and what led you into the education space in general.
Yeah. So I started in education about close to about almost 20 years ago. Seems like I'm super young. I'm only 33 years old, but I started in education at 14. I was a teacher professions major in high school, actually.
Wow.
So we had this program called Teaching Thematics in high school. And so I participated in that program for 4 years. So my senior year, I will only go to school from like 8 o'clock a.m. to 10 o'clock a.m. And I would do my student internship, I think from like 11 to 3 at my internship site, which was actually my former elementary school that I had went to in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I had got 5 college credits to go to college from the program. And I also received a scholarship as well. So I went to college at the University of Cincinnati, studied education for a year, realized at that time that it wasn't for me. I honestly did not like the education, being an education major, because in Cincinnati, I was the only Black male in my cohort group.
Wow.
And I also had a professor who kind of was like, when I said I wanted to work in like low income, like urban schools, she was like, well, we teach y'all better for you to be able to work at like schools that is more advanced than that. And so you don't have to go through the struggle. And this is a Black woman professor that actually said that. She was like, why would you want to work there? Yeah. And so I end up leaving the education profession, going into communication where all the Black people at. And literally I know, right? And I did that for I was a 5-year senior, and so I did that. In my senior year, I was taking Black male development classes, and my professor, Dr. Abercrombie, he brought in a Boy Scout troop, and they talked about what does it mean to really have mentors. And part of his speech was, well, what would it look like to have more Black male teachers? And none of them had Black male teachers. And so I was like, you know what, I have to do it. So I did Teach for America, did 2 years. And then I realized that there was a need for Black male teachers in my second year, because I was going to continue to teach. But in my second year, Jonathan Farrell got shot and killed by police officers. So around the same time as like the Trayvon Martin situations, I was teaching 7th grade English language arts. So obviously I was able to incorporate a lot of that into my classroom with the subject matter that I had. But I realized my boys of color needed more kind of like development and more care around that issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started after school programs supporting boys of color. And then they were the ones that then said that I was their first Black male teacher. And from there, I did a campaign to increase Black male teachers, and then went into nonprofit work where I started Profound Gentlemen, co-founded that organization, did that work for 8 years. That was dope. And then
Mm-hmm.
my specific role was to coach our coaches. And then I left that work of May 2022 because I wanted to expand the impact that I had in education. I knew that the organization was becoming a little bit more corporate in the sense of like, this is specifically we want to do. And then also, yeah, like the older organization gets, the less, I would say, creative that it really has space to be able to do, rightfully so, right? Like, this is what funders are investing in, specifically these areas and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I still wanted to be more innovative. I still wanted to take different approaches. And yeah, so I left May of 2022 to expand that. And I knew that, honestly, to be flat honest, I'm gonna be straight up raw with you all in this
Let's
podcast.
go.
But I knew
Let's
that
go.
yeah, I knew that nonprofit was not a place where you could be as innovative as when you have your own dollars and it's for profit, because that's more unrestricted funds. And I knew that in order to retain men of color, we had to do stuff that is definitely more unconventional. And that's how we were able to retain with Profound Gentlemen. And that work was that we were doing unconventional work. But the more, again, you become corporate, the less you have the opportunity to be able to do those type of things.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot, man. That's a lot.
It is. And
yeah.
I just want to comment, because, brother, I mean, give thanks to the work that you've been putting in since high school. Like, that's a unique situation.
Yes,
Like,
sir.
Yeah.
I have so many questions just off that alone. I mean, just the program, how many brothers in the program? Like, were you the only one, like a black boy of color in the program? Like, in that?
No, it was, I went to Collinwood, which is one of historical schools in Cleveland, Ohio. My dad graduated from there. My mom graduated from there. Her sisters graduated from there. Like, I have a lineage, like, of family who graduated from this school. And so I'm a proud, like, railroader, which is our mascot. Sit dead in the middle of, like, Cleveland, Ohio, next to Glenville, which is where a lot of your football players, a lot of major football players kind of like graduate from Glenville. Steve Harvey graduated from Glenville. So we got a lot of, you know what I mean? That's our rival over there. But we respect Glenville and stuff. But the late Stephanie Tubbs Jones was the House representative. She graduated from Collinwood, one of the first Black women to represent Ohio in a House. But yeah, so I did high school teaching thematics. And then, interesting enough, they had Ohio Future Educators of America, like Future Farmers type of program.
Yeah.
So they had Ohio Future Educators of America. I was the president of that in high school. And so part of my role was like, we had to do like different like education competitions. So I still remember, like, our theme was education is the key to freedom. Unlock it. And so we had to like create a banner, do speeches and things like that. And we were competing against all of these other schools in Ohio.
Yeah.
And we came in third. So that was good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we really did a good job. And then we had STARS program, Student Teachers Achieving Real Success. That was a summer camp that I would go to for student teaching for high schoolers in Cleveland, Ohio. It was a Cleveland, Ohio, because it was about 6 or 7 other high schools that had a teacher thematics program. And so again, they were training really, inner city students to become teachers. And so, yeah, it was so many Black folks that were in the program. Like, I was surprised when I got to college and I was the only Black male in my program because there were, I mean, literally the STARS program had maybe 100, 150 students live on a college campus for 2 weeks. Yeah, and we would go to college classes, and it was amazing. And that's partially how we were able to receive our college credits. We got college credits from the college, but then we also got it in a teaching portfolio. And I actually have my portfolio over there. And it literally has because I keep it on my coffee table where I started, and it's so interesting. One small fact too. I know I'm taking up a lot of talking space because it's so interesting, but I haven't talked about. Go ahead, because it is. I haven't talked about this in a minute. But one interesting thing is I taught first grade when I did my senior year internship in high school. When I graduated from college, and then I taught my first year. I taught 7th grade English language arts. That was the same group of students, like the same age group. You know what I mean? In a sense, so I was teaching that similar generation. So that was kind of fun. And now, yeah, those students are in their 20s, which is amazing, and impacting the world and stuff. So I still hear from students that I taught still to this day. Yeah, it's really cool.
Changed their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, the high school feast was fun. Like, we don't have that anymore. A lot of time, like, that could I always talk about career day, how people don't during career day, like there's always like firefighters coming, police officers, but nobody steps out and say like become a teacher. And like it's very simple. So like doing career day to really promote being a teacher, but most people don't do that.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions, Cal. I got a lot of questions.
I know. Go for it because, man, I mean, that's unique, man. That's such a unique situation. Just to chime in before Kai asks this question, man, brother. Like, him and I have talked about that. Those programs mean so much to communities. The fact that you were able to come through that program and to be able to be supported in your interest in becoming a Black male urban teacher or just a teacher in general as a Black man, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was interesting being able to do that work. It was I thoroughly enjoyed, really having that background. So by the time I taught in my first year, I had a lot of teaching experience, and that really did help. That really did help because I didn't operate like a traditional first year teacher. Because I had so much experience with students. So, yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know where to start, Cal. I don't know if it's going to even be. I think I'm going to start off with a statement and then follow it up with a question. Well, Mario, again, with what my brother Cal said, thank you. Really. Yeah. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, because it's interesting to me and it still baffles me. I don't even know why I still get surprised by it, but the lack of, and this is the theme of the discussion, the lack of Black educators, especially in urban schools, is so desperately needed. And what baffles me is the fact that we know this already, right? This is not a surprise. This isn't new information. And I think it's a cognitive dissonance because we don't want, like you said, we're going to get live, right? We're getting real. 100, we're going to keep it 100, as they say. I talk about this with Kyle, the young people. I don't know if Mario knows, but I have an organization called 4Ts, which stands for Teaching Teens to Think. And I'm in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. And I deal with youth of the 13 to 18 demographic directly. And in fact, I just had a conversation with 2 of them, by the way, Kyle. I forgot to mention yesterday. And I was, trying to, man, you'll be surprised. Oh man. So anyway, the statement that I guess I'm trying to say, which shouldn't be a surprise, is that I believe, and this is just my opinion, this doesn't reflect the organization Grand Rising Collective in any way, shape, or form. 2714. But I believe it's a systemic is a systemic agenda. I believe it's designed that way to keep us out. I see personally the impact that black male educators have on young people of color. I see it to this day. And I think we need to wake up as a culture and realize that this is how it's been designed. It's designed that way to keep us out of it, right? The educational system is, and I'm just going to keep it real. I'm keeping it 100. So I just wanted to preface that statement to say what you said, Mario, surprises me and it shouldn't. It's just what it is. And I'm going to tie it into a formal question, right? As we dive into this conversation a little more. And yes, so for our audience, currently, what is your specific title?
Yeah.
And then what was your educational experience, good and bad? And how did it encourage you to get into the education business based on what I just said in regards to the systemic agenda that's designed to keep us out of it? What encouraged you to stay in it?
No, that's so good. Okay, so my role right now is I am a mindfulness leadership coach. Because I realized in my last year of the organization, and I'll go to how I even got to becoming a mindfulness leadership coach. Because in my last year of the organization, I experienced a lot of homophobia, a lot of just attacks on my character, and I completely, and I kind of hate to say this, but like, it's not that I understand, but I also recognize that when people choose to do something differently, and when there is something that is different than the norm, people typically try to shun it down and try to get back to normal as possible, right? And so my co-founder had left already, and so me being kind of like the face of the organization, a lot of people don't like that, right? Like to have a Black queer leader leading. It's still this space where unfortunately, where you have, and that's a system in itself, where there's a certain Black male that's supposed to lead an organization, and Black queer people supposed to just support the work. And you see that in James Baldwin, you see that in Bayard Rustin, which his film is coming out next month on Netflix, which I can't wait. And you see this, you continue to see this, right? And so even in a Black community, we even have where there is a system that says that this is the type of person that's supposed to lead an organization. And I chose to be like, well, I don't agree to that, and I don't subscribe to that, and I'm also not going to allow myself to be burdened by that. And I cannot remember. I'm trying to think about this one quote that I just read. I'm reading this book called Shantaram, and it's so good. It's so good. It's about this
Shantaram?
Yes, it's this Australian who escapes prison and moves to Bombay, which it was called at the time, in India, and lives in the slums and actually starts this clinic and stuff. But it's so interesting because he escapes prison. It's like and he begins to start having money where he could leave the slums, you know. But he chooses to stay because he realized that this is his impact. This is what he's supposed to do. And he lives in a space where there's thieves and there's corruption and there's all of these different things. And the guy basically says something to him around like, well, you know, there's this system that's supposed to keep us, you know, in the slums. There's this system that's supposed to keep us, you know, they're supposed to keep the rich over here, because the slums is literally across the street from like one of the largest buildings in Bombay. And so, and he's like, well, how do these people make it? And it's something around the fact of like, you know, well, it's really like people who know how to, you know, curve a system. The interesting thing is that you get really good at it, you know, and you really start to understand how to go around the system to be able to make things work. And these folks that live in the slums they were able to figure out how to make it work, right? How to have all of these different things in order to live. And I think that kind of spoke to me because I was able to learn how to go around the system. You get really good folks who are born to, who can't go in, like us, we cannot abide by the system. So we learn the system very easily. You know what I mean? We understand what it is. And so we go around the system. And that's why I became a mindfulness leadership coach, is because of the fact that as coaches, funny thing enough, and I talk about this with a lot of other coaches, is that we're very good at being able to move around the system. And I talked to one of my friends, she's a coach. And we was talking yesterday, and she was like, I'm crazy. Like I'm that type of person. She was like, I also got like crazy people around me. She was like, I can't have friends that are normal. And I'm like, same. Like we just wow. You know what I mean? I always like the underdog. I love the person that is okay with making mistakes, and that's coaching. Like and so we get to coach those who are at the table, who goes into who is invited to the building. You know what I mean? And a lot of times coaches, we work outside of the building, and so they come to us to be able to receive the help, to be able to make these these tiny moves and stuff like that. But yeah, I use mindfulness to really keep me afloat when I was going through everything that I went through with what I experienced, because a part of me understood why folks did the things that they did, because you have to maintain that normalcy. And also, as you make more and more money, you have to maintain a sense of normalcy. You start to just fall into this trap of the norm. And I just choose not to live my life that way, which is why I keep my expenses at a minimum. Because I never know what may happen. I never know what may happen. Like one day I could be broke, and so I'm like, okay, let me just keep my expenses at a minimum because I choose this lifestyle. Yeah.
Right. Wow. But I would say, Mario, there's a freedom and a discipline to that lifestyle as well, like you said.
Oh yes.
That, because you begin to realize that, yes, I like nice things and I want to have nice things and do nice things, but it's not predicated on having the fanciest and the most glamorous and things like that. You really get a chance to appreciate the things that you do have and are able to do, and that becomes the luxury. I feel.
Yeah, no, discipline creates freedom, and I think that's one of the biggest things with entrepreneurship is really creating that level of freedom. Everybody not able. I tell folks all the time, if you don't have discipline, and I don't think there is nothing wrong with a 9-to-5 job at all, but please work that 9-to-5 job if you don't have that high level of discipline. And even in many 9-to-5 jobs, you still need discipline. You know what I mean? But if you really, and the same friend I was talking to yesterday, she was like, if you really want to understand faith and step it out on faith, become an entrepreneur. when that check from that 9-to-5 don't show up that next month, and every 2 weeks, you really start to recognize, okay, I really gotta go out here and actually make it. You know what I mean? Like and I love it. Like I love the hungerness of entrepreneurship and grinding, and sometimes not knowing where your money is coming from. Like it's fun to me. I enjoy it.
This is rich, child. This is rich, man. Speaking as an entrepreneur, Kyle can speak on this as well. Kyle with Precise Minds, me with 4 T's. I can't. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt. This is vibing right here. This is the vibe. You definitely need faith if you're going to be an entrepreneur. And I'll try and be real brief with this. So I worked in corporate, like that whole corporate thing you're talking about, for like over 20 years. And 14 of those years was at Bloomberg, which is a financial markets and commodities firm right in Manhattan. And it was a situation that happened after 14 years where, like you said, you have to have discipline either way, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're working a 9 to 5. Because if you don't have discipline, even if you work a 9 to 5, you're not going to have that 9 to 5 very long. So you definitely have to have some level of discipline. And in that discipline, what I've learned over the 14 years while running my organization, after, I would put the 14 hours in for the man, as it were, and getting that check. Now put another probably 4 hours on top of that after work, 3 to 4 hours after work for my own hobby. And it was an experience in and of itself. But I'll tell you this: at some point, whether people realize this or not, there's a point at which your integrity, your morality, and your character gets compromised if you stay on that 9 to 5 job. And unfortunately, a lot of people find themselves trapped because they have obligations, family, house and stuff like that. And they can't get out of that 9 to 5. And then they find out 40 years later, when they become 60 or 50 years later, come 65 retirement, they realize that they spent most of their life, unfulfilled. And at the end of it, all they get is a certificate or a gold-plated pen to say thank you for your services, right? And then you compare that to those who did take that leap of faith and went out on faith and did their own thing, whether it's in a consultant arena or, self-employed or entrepreneur, whatever, realize that their life has been more fulfilled having done that, because there's a statement that says, what weighs heavier, regret or what was the other one, risk or something like that? I don't know. There's a quote that says, you really hate it when you wish when you grow up, you should have took that chance, because you never know if it would have been successful or not. So I'm just inspired by what you just said there, Mario. And I just wanted to interject that in regards to, it's definitely important to take that risk, because to close this out, when I worked at Woolworth, I reached a crossroads in my life, and it was, either you're gonna work on this job for the rest of your life, when you have a organization that you've been working on that can change the lives of young people because you came from it, right? Which one are you gonna do? And I can honestly say that. And it was a point where my spirit and integrity was compromised. I can honestly say me taking that leap of faith was the best thing I could have ever done, because the opportunities that came from it, because of that faith and what I led to do, was beneficial. And then the final thing, Kyle, I'm gonna close it out and say, we all have, and this is what I talk to young people as well, we all have a purpose. We were all born with a purpose. And I believe part of life is to do the homework and find out what that purpose is. And once you find out what that purpose is, it may be working for a 9 to 5, but at least you're working for a 9 to 5 in alignment with your purpose. And that's what gives you the fulfillment, right? And if it's not, you're gonna succeed either way, but the key ingredient or the foundational piece is finding out what your purpose is. So thank you, Mario, for that, man.
Yes.
Kyle, you want to add to that, and then I'll go into the next one. But I had to compliment Mario on that.
Yeah, going to the next one. No, I have nothing to add to that. You said everything. You said, seriously. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you go through it. I was just having a talk with my good friend the other day about our journey as entrepreneurs. And faith is mandatory. You know what I'm saying? Resilience is mandatory to be a true entrepreneur. So everything y'all saying is on point. And I hope the family is listening, because it has become, as they say, sexy to say you're an entrepreneur, but you don't have faith and resilience. You are not a true, I'll say, you're not a true entrepreneur.
No, that's real.
And you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. So I heard about what you do. So where did Messy Roots come from, Mario?
Yes.
What's Messy Roots about?
Yeah, so I believe in community. And so first, I think that, mindfulness leadership coaching is super dope. I have many nonprofit and for-profit clients that I continue to serve. And I realized too that like coaching was a area that many Black males basically haven't really tapped into, and men of color in general really haven't tapped into and really don't know about. And so I wanted to create a space where men of color were able to receive like coaching that was affordable because they were just now entering into coaching. And I realized how much coaching helped me when I was leading Profound Gentlemen. Like I love receiving coaching. And I'm like, how can people do it without having a coach? Like this is like wow to me. You know what I mean? Like, I had a therapist, a life coach, and a business coach. And I still have a business coach and a therapist still to this day. And yeah, I think it's super important. And so I started Messy Roots as a leadership and mindfulness community for men of color, where we offer retreats and small group coaching for folks to be able to participate in. And the goal is for men of color who are in leadership roles and just in leadership opportunities to achieve their goals with least stress and burnout as possible. And so we have leadership cohorts. We have weekend 3-day retreats, and then we have 1-day online retreats as well, that we call our leadership labs. And so like it helps folks to be able to get connected to themselves and then be able to think about like their purpose in the world. And so that's really like the work that I love doing it because I love community. We have almost 100 guys in the space. We started it around August of 2022. So it's growing, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm also like, yeah, like we definitely also need to make sure that like, that quality is going to be there. And I think that's the work that I want to continue to do is like not continue to. I do want people to still joy, but I also need to focus more on like the quality in which we're providing folks. Yeah, so definitely want to make sure that folks is getting what they're coming for.
That's awesome. All right, one quick question, Kayode. Messy Roots. How did you come up with that name, Messy Roots?
Yeah, so I'm a plant guy background. I got so many plants. I have like over 50 plants. I have over 50 plants in my house. Yeah, so my house is literally like a terrarium. And it's so funny because inside of my house, like people be like, yo, the air is just different in here. Like I'll be like, yeah, like it's just
plants real different, y'all.
Yeah, it's just real clean in my house. Green being my favorite color too, so it's just green everywhere. And so but plants could teach you a lot of things. And during my entrepreneurship journey, that's when I actually started growing plants and started becoming like a plant dad. And I loved it. And I realized, and my dad has always had a green thumb. And that's another thing. Let me go back really quickly to what you were saying about like how I got it, because I didn't answer that question, how I got into education, because part of the plants is also because of my dad, and then education is because of my dad too. My dad was a juvenile detention boot camp sergeant, so I always cheered for the underdogs. That's always been my thing. And so 7th grade is usually like the underdog group, and I realized that even when I watch a movie, it's always like that kid that's like the underdog that I'm always rooting for. It was funny too because I was watching Deion Sanders. I love his stuff, but his son Shiloh is so funny to me because Shiloh is like the underdog. He always plays last on like the sibling ranking that Deion Sanders. I'll be like, Shiloh, I just hope one day like you're number one. I just be like look at like, but I love Deion Sanders' coaching ability and a lot of that applies to entrepreneurship and even my own coaching. I love following sports documentaries. Like sports documentaries are so good. Yeah, but going back to my dad, yeah, so he would take us to when we didn't have a sitter, he would take us to his job, and he was again a juvenile detention boot camp sergeant, and he worked in the sex offenders department. So these considered the slums of the the detention center, right? Because like you did like the most crime of crime, right? It considered in people's eyes. And so my dad was able to rehabilitate them and literally bring them back into like the world and be able to have normal jobs and be able to live their life. And I would see when I would be with my dad and, we'll be at Walmart or Silvermist and stuff like that, which all of them are now closed these days, but in Cleveland, Ohio, but they would be like, oh, you saw like, and they remember me when I was a little kid. They would be like, yo, I'm doing this now, and I have a family, and now I'm doing all these different things. So I saw the work that my dad did, and so it really hit me to really go into education or to be able to make an impact like that. I'm always rooting for the underdog. That's like my biggest thing. Is like the person who folks say no is the folks who I'm always saying yes to. And that's how I even built my team with Profound Gentlemen. We had about 30 coaches that we had, and I brought in a whole bunch of misfits. Those who had criminal records, those who got fired from teaching, those who missed work for 2 weeks and was in rehab and things like that. And these are the stories that our coaches would come and bring, and was like, the folks who didn't have, a chance to make it, they didn't have a plan B. That's the type of group that I created. And oh my God, the work that we did, that's how we were able to retain 98% of male educators of color. But the reality of it is that when I left, they left, right? Because they no longer felt safe.
Yeah.
As well. But part of it was the fact that because it wasn't the normal type of hire. It wasn't the normal type of folks that, people would typically bring in to coach teachers. I mean, these guys were educators. They were educators themselves, but it was hard for them to hard for them to get education jobs because of their background and their record. But they were some of the best educators, some of the best teachers, some of the best coaches, right? And even when we do hiring, we will only bring in 5% of those who apply to become a coach in Profound Gentlemen, because so many people wanted to work for us. And the people who I would bring in are the ones who were willing to tell their story, the ones who didn't have that second chance. Like I everything is on the table for them. I'm like, this is the folks that we need to hire. And people don't typically hire that way. People typically hire. I never looked at resumes. Resumes only tell me what you've done. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I never did references. I'm like, who are you now? And how do you want to impact now? And that's how I thought about it, And then I found out in North Carolina that you're supposed to do references and that you need resumes. I was like, okay, we got to backtrack now because I just hired the unconventional way. I did. I was like, oh, I messed up. This is the type of leadership who I am, because it's like, why care about a resume? Yeah, traditionals to look at a resume like, oh, he worked at this place. I don't give a damn where you worked at. Because I guarantee you, and this could come off arrogant, but it's real. I guarantee you, wherever you worked at is not the same skills that I'm gonna use in the current work that we gonna do. I don't care. And so, but Messy Roots came from that leadership experience where, when I would see a plant and the plant's leaves would be drooping, oftentimes people are like, oh, I gotta water the plant, or I need to, it needs sun, I need food. Oftentimes you gotta get in that dirt and really see the roots, and you gotta get messy. And that was a kind of analogy for how I see education and how I see leadership. Is it's typically the things that we don't see that's impacting the things that is actually visible. And so Messy Roots is, I've always been a leader to just get in the dirt and just get messy with the person that I'm working with, and like, let's figure this out. Is it the pot? Is it that some of the roots is bad, and we got to cut off some of that? But my analogy is that a part of it is that when you put a seed in dirt, it's dark, right? And many of us, our hearts are seeds, right? So like when we think about that, like oftentimes we in like these dark places and stuff, but things grow in those places, right? And when you think about a seed, it's going in two directions. It's going up and it's going down at the same time. So it's going deeper into the darkness with its roots, and it's also going up towards the light. And so as you continue to seek the light, those dark places that you got to go deeper into your soul. You got to go deeper into those dark places that you are not willing to go into in order to go further towards the light that you were created and in your purpose that you was created to do it. So that's why it's called Messy Roots, because plants is such an analogy for leadership, to help you recognize I gotta go deep. So like if it's like, oh, I want to go do this thing and I want to go achieve this job, well then you got to expand your roots. You got to go deeper in your roots. That means that you got to change your pot. That means you got to change the soil. That's hard work, right? That you got to change the foundation of where you're at, and a lot of people are unwilling to do that because they get comfortable, right? But many of the plants that I love, like this plant that's right next to me, I mean, this is literally the first plant that I ever had. And when I first got it, it was dying. I'm telling you now, like it was like I was killing the plant. Like it was like, and so the fact that like it's almost towards the ceiling, like I literally had to remove this plant. It used to be on a stand, right? And most people's plants that's like this, they usually can't. It's usually probably grow 10, 11 inches. This plant is literally about 4 to 5 feet, right? But it's like that constant care. And I got it. The pot that I put it in is this deep pot. And it was like, this is what I need. This is what I need. And now I could grow, right? And we have to be willing to do that for people. And so often in like the Black community, the system that we're in, like the pot is like a system, right? Right. And oftentimes like, what I love about even like a Monstera plant, and a Monstera plant is so dope, is that they know how to manipulate a system. If you want to keep me in this pot, I'm gonna grow roots out of this pot. I'm gonna grow these air roots to be able to keep me growing, right? And so like Monstera to me are like the underdogs. I created this book I haven't released yet, but I love Monsteras because they're kind of like the underdogs of plants, because you could put me in any environment. I swear to you, that's what Monsteras do. I'm going to figure out a way. Like, okay, you want to keep me in this pot? I'm gonna show you my roots, because I'm gonna move over here and get moisture from the air because you haven't been watering me. Like Monsteras know how to manipulate that system and to go around it. And so I always in my book, I have these different groups of boys, and this one group is called the Monsters, and they're the underdog groups. They wanted to do things differently. And I love that group. And yeah, Monstera is like the plant that goes always around the system. They don't care. They do not care. Yeah. So that's how we get messy roots. And even in one of our logos that's coming out, it's a Monstera plant for messy roots, because Monsteras don't care. It's like, oh, you gonna put me here? I'm gonna go around it. I'm gonna go around it until you put me in the pot that I supposed to be in.
Powerful, man. So much
family.
And just go ahead, Cal. I'm sorry.
No. Just family. I hope y'all picked that wisdom that this brother just dropped on all of us. With the symbolism, with the symptomatic thinking, with the cultural understanding, with the connection to nature, connection to the environment, to the world. That was beautiful, brother. Thank
you.
And you emit that. I can tell that this is something that is a purpose and a passion of yours that is unique, and that's beautiful, man. You broke it all the way down.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, brother.
I like the fact that you mentioned you have to the seed grows in darkness. As the progress of seeds, right, grows, because this is like too, right? Plant the seed, another will come water it, and then it's God that brings the increase. I like you said you have to, in order to grow more, to order to reach the light, you have to get deeper into the dark. That is profound, right? So when you look at I term it in terms of society as well. We have what's called a virus, as it were, and that virus is racism. That virus is ignorance. That virus is dissension. And in order for us to heal that virus that's plaguing society today, for all of humanity, for society, is to dig deep. And part of that digging deep is to look at the racism that has been to plant itself in the root of what we call the soil is. And that, part of that is having these hard conversations, these hard discussions. And it hurts. It's not easy. And it's painful. And it's to some extent probably unbearable. But in order for us to get stronger, in order for us to grow, in order for us to fulfill our purpose, as it were, we got to dig deep into that darkness. 100%. We got to get down to the root, messy roots. We got to get down to the actual And I love the fact that you said the underdog, where all right, you're going to, like for us as a culture, right? You're going to put in this situation, right? You're going to put us in this system that's designed for us to fail. Well, we're going to find a way to succeed. And that's what we're doing and been doing since we've been in this country.
Every time.
People tell us all the time, no other culture could have made it and survived like we have. And thrive, not only make it and survive, but we're also thriving. And that's symbolic to Messy Roots. And that's how profound your message, Mario, was to me with regards to that. Thank you. That is an inspiration to me, and I'm sure it'll be an inspiration to many other people as well. I'm sorry, Kyle. Go ahead, man. I just had that.
No, it's very inspirational to hear this brother's story because his soil was enriched, for him to be able to grow as he is, and that's a unique situation. We wish it was more prevalent, and it is more prevalent than we know, but it's still not as prevalent as we need it to be. And I love what this brother is doing, with his roots. His roots run deep. They say still run deep. No, his roots run deep because of his background with his father and his family and his education, his maturation process of him. And I love the fact that you said with your father that these folks who committed these heinous crimes and on top of that with the sexual abuse or sexual assault were able to recreate themselves and to heal and to also create their own families and become productive citizens again. And these are the people that they so-called throw away. They're no good. This plan is dead. This plan is done. But no, you have more growing to do. You just don't know how to nurture it. You don't know how to facilitate. You don't know how to help these men and women grow, and that's beauty, man. And that's what I've been about as far as an educator, because it's like you say, it's where the people won't go. It's where the people say, there's no value here. No, there's a value. You just don't know how to dig. You don't know how to cultivate. You don't know how to mine those resources and gems out of it and bring it to growth, brother. So, brother, everything you said, man, I'm like, where's the next class? Let me
interject. So I deal with inner city youth, particularly, right? And they're teenagers. And I tell them, like, all the funding, if not, I'll say most of the funding is going to, and this has been I'm surprised, it's been a decade longer than this. All the resources, I'll say that, is going to these young kids, first grade, kindergarten, stuff like that. As far as the teenage population, if they find themselves in that category, they're written off. It's a done deal for them. Now, I spoke to educators and nonprofit who's supposed to be in youth development and talked to them about these teenagers who are the next leaders of society. What are you going to do with them? And they're like, oh, they're gone. They're lost. They're out of our control. We can't help them, is what they tell us. And that, at the part of Mario, that's what inspires me. Oh, you can't help them, but we can. And that's what, Kyle, what you're talking about right there. Those are the people you wrote off. No. Those are the people who are actually the creators, right? It's those who have that drive. They just haven't been. They don't. These so-called non POCs, right? They don't know how to deal with them. They don't know how to communicate with them. They're more intimidated, stuck up in their own unconscious or even possible conscious bias, and that blocks them from really being able to change this person's life. Which ties me into this question, Mario. What specifically are the benefits of working with Black male educators to get this going, to the system and to counterbalance the write-off that they're getting from the system? What specific can you give us are the benefits of working with Black male educators, bro?
Yeah, that's so good. I'm sorry, I keep on like leading and stuff like that in my seat. I'm just like taking it all out and stuff. Like I think, one of the things is that we know that students have a better chance of being able to attend college or in any type of post-secondary opportunity. We also know, and this is just all students, right? This is not just Black students. This is like even white students, right? Like there's a benefit. I think one of the things, because now in my work with Messy Roots, I don't just specifically work with just male educators of color. I work with all men of color. And one of the things I realize now is that we really 100% need to understand how much we are connected. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm learning. And I could even go back to plants. It's like your plants, they could thrive by themselves, but it's weird. And I read this. I also read this in The Heartbeat of Trees. There's this book. Barack Obama had it as one of his top books in 2021 or 2020. It's called The Heartbeat of Trees. And one of the things that he talked about, that the author talked about in his book, is how trees struggle when when they're by themselves, right? When you look underneath the ground and into the dirt, and you see the interconnectedness, it's like trees that are together. They are communicating, one, through the roots anyway.
Yes.
And the second thing is that, like, anything that's invasive to that area is handled below the ground, right? And so there's some plants that might be invasive to the trees, or some plants that might be or some trees that we plant that might be invasive. And one of the ways that you're able to tell, which is so interesting, is that if you just go hiking and just look at trees, they create space for each other. They actually, interesting enough, do. When they are in line in a community with each other, they create space. You could easily see this tree kind of align itself out, right? The same thing happens when you bring plants into your home. And yeah, you could have one plant, but if you actually start having a collection, definitely those who are in like that same region and same area, 100% the plants that are from Africa, they start to thrive with other plants, even though they're not in the same soil. It's something that, in terms of the vibrations and how they're communicating with each other, that allows them to be able to thrive. And so, same thing with humans and how we show up, and our level of community and connectedness. I've been really, really focusing a lot on how we are all connected. Like, even how, and I think, like, this is the problem that white people face, and this is what even what James Baldwin was talking about, is that, like, I think, like, as Black people, I think here's the interesting thing about, like, even when it comes to coaching and going into that, is that one of the things about mindfulness leadership coaching, I'm gonna go back into what James Baldwin said, but one of the things about mindfulness leadership coaching is that we're able to also tell our story, right? In traditional coaching, ICF coaching, when you get your ICF certificate, typically, as a coach, you're supposed to not tell your story and not share. And I realized for people of color that doesn't work for us. Why? Because we are storytelling. We're a storytelling community.
Yes.
You see that in Indian culture. You see that in Native American culture. You see that in Southeast Asian culture. You see that in Black culture. You see that everywhere, right? Except for white culture. Whereas, and I specifically say white culture. I'm specifically saying white culture because you see it in Italian culture. You see it in Poland culture. You see it in Greek culture, right? And so the funny thing is, when what James Baldwin said was that one way to end racism is when white people could stop saying that they're white and actually go back to the groups that they actually belong to. Because the only reason that the only time that these groups agreed upon things, right? Because even in the white community, not even gelling, right? So they don't even know how to mesh with the rest of us that is coming together, because they don't even know how to come together. The only reason that the only thing that they came together on, the Polish and Italian and Greek and British came together, is the name white. And the only thing that and white was just to only say that I'm not Black. And so the term white is literally just to say that I belong here and I'm not Black, right? And it's a term used to make sure that you're, in a sense, like, make sure that you're against, people of color. That's the only reason. That's the only way that they came together. So when James Baldwin broke that down, I was like, wow, that makes sense. So when you start hearing white people say, oh, I'm Italian, or I'm Poland, or I'm Greek, then they have to face the inner battles of when this group of white folks, when it gets this group of white folks, and how do we come together, right? Like, how do we act? Like, how do Jewish people actually come together, and and that's the thing, it's like we all are continuing to see how we are all connected. And the only time that white people came together, non-POC people came together, is when they agreed upon the term white. That's the only time they came together. But for the rest of us, we're like, oh yeah, let's see how we could help, how we could support, how we could do these type of things. You know what I mean? Because we understand, right? And I think that's the beautiness of like education and like this work now. When I see Black male teachers more specifically, is this idea of connectedness, this link that was missing that could bring people together. I see Black men who educators who are working actually in majority white private schools and changing up the game in those schools, right? And that matters too. All of these things matter because of our level of connectedness, that vibration that we feel in the soles of our feet that is going unheard. And I think that is what's messing us all up. It's missing that connectedness of what you're seeing. All of these was it 29 mass shootings, and we're on day X, you know what I mean, in January, you know what I mean, like more mass shootings than how many days of that we had in 2023 already, right? And that's that. I'm not saying. Well, I am saying this. That is that idea that we're not connected. And what I mean by that is that's that is the sole thing, is that we're not connected, because we're not connected where healthcare is talking to housing, and housing is talking to education, and education is talking to policy and politics. That is the connectedness that we need. It's not solely on just one thing. It's not just so we all have to play our part and making and coming together. And that is going to be very difficult. That's going to be very hard, and we're going to need a lot of people. And the thing is, we're going to need a lot of stories, and you have to first start with your story. And it's simple. It's honestly really simple. It starts honestly with just one by one. How can we continue to tell our story? Because once you hear somebody's story, you cannot dismiss the things that they have gone through. And that makes it very difficult. And so we have to continue to do and that's my role. My role is to continue to do the storytelling work, right? Like that's the number one tool that I use. I use a lot of creativity. I use a lot of storytelling, and the retreats and the mindfulness consulting and coaching work that I do. It is the storytelling. And when you see people who didn't even know each other leave and have like these deep conversations, it's simply amazing. Last thing I'll say really quick, I know because I'm just talking, but we have this mastermind. I have this mastermind, and it's 4 countries represented in this mastermind that I'm doing. 32 people in the mastermind program that I have. 32 countries represented, 22 states represented. Just that one person alone coming together, being able to connect with another person from another country and another person from another state. What's happening in your state? What's happening in these like what's happening in your city? That could change, because all of these people are supporting 3-4 people. And those 3-4 people now are impacted by that person. They're supporting 30 people, right? And this is why, like, but the way that storytelling can continue to get moved at a much faster rate is in a book. And this is why the biggest crime right now that's really happening right now is book bans. There are banning of books everywhere right now, and a lot of us are not really focused in on that. And one way to kind of combat that, I've been telling my friends, and this is a simple approach, this is a systematic approach. I've been telling my friends to get a library card. Get a library card. If you get a library card and just rent out a book, right? Even if you don't read the book, I'm sorry, but even if you don't read the book, like start ordering these Black books, because they cannot deny the data that is that it you can't deny the data and what they see in these books, because there is an extreme attack on books right now, in book bans. The Florida is the worst, Texas, I mean, it's just starting to come up and up, you know what I mean? And so storytelling, I think, is the base, and I think and I know that the system know that storytelling is the base. And so if we could stop people from being able to tell their stories and stop the distribution of these stories, then we could stop the hope. We could stop folks from being able to believe that these things can happen. And so we got to tell more stories. We have to read more, which is why they didn't want slaves to read, which is why our reading scores are so low, right? Because it's like, keep it that way. Keep these kids on the third grade reading level. Why? Because they'll never pick up a book. Have them read these boring books. Why? Because they'll never pick up a book. And my favorite thing is I had my students have a love for reading, right? And that's what a Black teacher is able to do is definitely in English. Is I had my students reading all types of stuff, the other Westmore, which now my students hit me up and they're like, man, we read the other Westmore, and now Westmore is the first Black governor of Maryland. You know what I mean? Yeah. My students read this book almost 10 years ago, the other Westmore. And so like now they have this connection. Now they may be more, they may be heavier into politics now, right? Because now they have a connection, because I read this man's story 10 years ago when I was in Mr. Shaw's class. You know what I mean? This is the importance of like storytelling. It's the impact. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
This is what Black teachers can do. This is the work that Black teachers, Black male teachers, more specifically for this conversation, have the ability to do, is that story. And now is rewriting that narrative, or that narrative that was already there. We just lifted it up.
Look, family. Speechless, family. You better recognize, family. You better recognize the work that this brother's doing right here. You better and the many other brothers who are doing this exact same thing. Well, not the exact same thing, but similar, because this brother's definitely unique. But you better get on board, because this is what we're doing out here, and we're doing phenomenal work. That's what I'm saying. Like that, it takes. And brother, that's why I appreciate you so much, man. The work that you've been doing and are doing and about to be doing is phenomenal. And that's why we want to, people say give you your flowers, but I'm gonna give you your flowers, your dap, your props.
I appreciate it.
because everything you're speaking, man, is on the real. And that is how myself and Kayode have been carrying ourselves as Black male influencers and educators throughout our life. Of course, we've had our, times, where struggles and things like all of us talk about, but it's in the beauties in the work. And like you said, the connections, the stories. What's the sister name? Chimamanda Adichie.
Oh yeah, and Ndoche Adichie. I love her books. Yeah,
The Danger of a Single Story. The Danger of a Single Story.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like I share that with my students. The Danger of a Single Story. The story. You have to personalize people. You know what I'm saying? We do racism. We do discrimination, sexism, like I said, homophobia. All these things, right? But like I said, when you get into someone's story, you see the humanity in people, right? Yeah. And we see the humanity in ourselves. And we have to view that in ourselves, and people who look like us first, I feel. Like that is my stance. We see in ourselves first, and then we're able to help and see that in other people outside of our ethnicity, outside of our neighborhood, outside of our community, and see the overall humanness in people, and to say, hey, we have a problem here. Let's solve this problem. And that's beautiful, man. I mean, everything you were saying, bro, I was just like, this is the type of people I've surrounded myself with, and these type of people that I admire. Like you said, the Westmores. We got a chance to meet him. I got a chance to take myself and my other colleagues got a chance to take our students. I think it was 2018. He spoke at BCC, which is Bronx Community College. And he was part of the BMI. CUNY has this, which is City University of New York. If no one knows, they have this Black Male Initiative program that was started by Charles Barron and his wife when Bloomberg was in office here in New York City. So they have it every year where all the Black males come together. I think I may have mentioned it to you in regard to when we talked initially. And Westmore came to speak, And some of my students like kind of like, who's this guy? Who is? I'm like, yo, you better listen up. This brother's really had a very interesting life, and how he's used that to put him in the spaces where he can transform the ideas around legalities and Black males and the negativity. And I'm like, y'all don't get it, but the brother was very personable. I'm like, yo, this brother definitely.
Oh, he's so good.
Right. If you don't go into politics, I didn't know it was going to be that. Again, I know he's going to be governor, Maryland, the first Black, but you never know what happens. You never know who you're talking to, and what potential people have in them if it's not manifested, if it's not supported, if it's not recognized, and like we always talk about, man, the jewels is in the journey, right? Grassroots, as they say, like the grassroots is in there. The nurturing, the nutritional value is there, but you
Yeah.
have to mind it. You have to tend to it. You have to what? Love it. You have to love what you're doing.
You
You have
do.
a passion and a skill for what you're doing. You know, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I call that love hard work. You know what I mean? I call it hard
that's
work.
what it
It's
is.
not hard
This
work,
is
it's hard work.
it's
And
hard
I
work.
teach,
Yes.
and I teach around heart-centered leadership, which is the idea that you first start off with self in the story of self before you're able to get connected with others in the story from others. And mindfulness help you to be able to do that, right? It's definitely, I love that you mentioned love. It's very rare that people start mentioning love with leadership, but you can't do leadership without love for
Yeah,
sure.
love.
Yeah.
And that's a real quick, and that's a deep African concept that we coming from.
Oh yeah,
Believe it or not.
100%. Yeah.
The ancient, just to drop it on, well, two things, right, that I noticed, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One, your color is green. Green is the chakra for love. That's the heart center,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, the ancient symbolism for love in Kemet, which people call Egypt, is the plow, which means you have to
Mm.
tend the soil. You have to love. You have to
Wow.
serve. Love is service. You know what
Wow,
I'm
that's so
saying?
beautiful. I
Yeah,
didn't
bro.
know
So,
that. I didn't
yeah,
know
bro.
that part.
You're in your
Yeah.
divine, bro. That's what I'm saying. Like
Thank
you're
you. I
in it.
appreciate that.
Brother, you're in it. You're in it.
Thank
I can
you.
tell. It emits from you. Like
I appreciate
it's
that.
a
Mario, this is why I hang with this brother, man.
Okay.
He's educating me, man.
That's awesome.
Oh man, love so integral. So with the young people that I deal with, people in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why they bond with me is because of that love. It's because they feel that love for me. I connect with them. There's no judgment. There's no stereotype. There's no you present this image. I'm intimidating. No, I come to you straight up, raw, in your face, love, and they feel that. It's not just words. It's not pedigrees. It's not none of it. It's the real genuineness of you wanting the best for them, right? The reason why I say that is because you mentioned stories. And I have to tell you, praise be to God, ancestors, our creator, whatever title you want to give, that no matter what context or who I'm speaking with, when I share my story, it breaks the barriers. It brings down the defenses of the people that I'm talking with. And I didn't realize it at the time. I'm just sharing and here's the point I'm trying to get to. I'm pouring out from me to this individual and it's draining, right? But the rewards of it is how a conversation or a connection develops just from me telling my story. But I'm able to do that because of, how can I say, the support system that I have around my belief, right? And my confidence to a degree where I can be vulnerable to open up and share something personal about me and what I've been through to this individual. And what Cal taught me is that when you're honest with someone, they're moved and compelled and to some extent forced to have to be honest
with themselves. Yeah.
Right, honest with themselves.
Yeah.
And
God.
it's an energy that takes place that is powerful, right? So my question to you, Mario, outside of the general questions that we have is, how can we get people in general, right? Whether our culture, just the world, but you start from wherever you want. How can we get them to overcome that barrier of just being vulnerable, to be confident enough in themselves to want to share their story? So that, because that establishes that foundation and the root, as you say, to open up this dialogue and for us to heal. What advice can you give an individual that may be insecure, protected, guarded, and not want to share their story, which is the centerpiece and the, what I mean?
Well, I always say that vulnerability is discipline. And a lot of people don't equate vulnerability to being discipline because I think that oftentimes people who, and I believe in this in a sense of that people who don't share their story don't trust themselves. And part of it is not understanding what does it mean for them to trust themselves. And so I start with the idea that in order to trust yourself, you have to be able to bet on yourself and see things through. And it goes as small as if you say that you're going to get up in the morning and go to the gym, how often are you actually doing that? Right. And so it's the routine and the habits that you have. And so oftentimes we fail ourselves so much that we believe that people reflect the way that we treat ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I'm sharing my story to someone, then I am also in a space where I believe that they're going to let me down as much as I let myself down. And so if I can go back to the place of very simpleness of like, and this is something that I do with my clients, is that and I have this, and it's all a part of it. But there's the second thing is core values, and I'll get to that. But one of the things that I do with my clients is I tell them to buy a plant, and every 7 days they have to water this plant. And one of the things that help them is that every 7 days they water the plant, and they see with this habit that this plant is growing, right? And so that's something that's very simple, that like sometimes we don't recognize how our habits that are not physical help us to be able to grow. And so we need some physical representation of what habits help us to be able to do, right? So if I know that like every day I need to do this, I need to read at least a half an hour a day, I know that I'm growing, but sometimes we don't see that growth. And so I equate that to something as simple as this: build the habit of every 7 days you water this plant. And they're like, oh my God, my plant is growing. Okay, now let's build another habit. Now the other habit is now I'm going to journal at the end of the day, right? And it might take them 3 months to recognize the growth that they made. So that's why I always do a plant, because a plant, maybe in a month, you could see some growth and new leaves in a plant, but they don't necessarily see the new leaves within themselves. Another thing that I do with that plant is I have them put a core value on that plant. So I have them do like a little name tag, and what is that core value? And in order to be able to tell your story, you also have to understand your boundaries, and your boundaries usually are your core values, right? So it's like I look at everything through the lens of creativity, love. Those are my top two core values, right? And so if I look at everything through the lens of creativity and love, then now I'm going to be able to recognize when I'm out of alignment of self, and that this person has disrespected, or I even disrespected my boundary of creativity, or I disrespected, or this person disrespected my boundary of love. And so now I create this perimeter of this is what I choose to do and this is what I choose not to do. And now that's a safe space for me to be able to share my story. And if people don't honor my core values, right? And if I don't honor my core values, then now I'm not able to tell my story. And so those are literally the basics of helping somebody to be able to tell. And I always even start off for high schoolers. Like many high schoolers don't know what their values are, right? So and many people don't know their values. And so what ends up happening is that you choose to do any and everything in the world, right? And not recognizing how it may impact your spirit. It may impact the way that you are showing up. And that suffering begins to happen. The suffering starts within the mind. And it is never, and it's typically never physical. It's normally your suffering is your perpetuated thoughts of this particular thing. And it's usually because of a breach of a core value that you either was aware of or was not aware of. And that's why like you can begin to look at suffering as being a good thing, because it helps you one to go deeper into your roots, but it's an awakening to help you to recognize that I'm not in alignment with self and where I'm supposed to go, and therefore now I can't tell my story. But I always start off for folks with what are your core values? You know what I mean? And how are you being present with yourself? We usually in the past or we in the future. Be present, be right now. And once you could trust yourself, you can begin to tell your story. But most people can't tell their story when they don't trust themselves.
Wow. One other question, Cal. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much. Question. What advice? Like, real quick. Because I speak with young people as well. One of the things I ask is, what are you naturally good at? What's your inherent skill set? Things of that nature that requires self-reflection, self-evaluation. It requires valuing and trusting the input from what others observe from you and being able to apply that to, what your career path is going to be. My question to you is, how can someone go about finding out or discovering what their core value is? Because a lot of them are grown.
That's so good. so good. The way for them to be able to understand their core values, one, you could go to viainstitute.com, VIA Institute. I don't know how to spell institute, by like not seeing the word.
Okay.
.com, and they have a free core values test. That's why I usually send my clients to, because what's interesting is they give you the top 10 in an explanation in terms of how it shows up for you. And then also Enneagrams are very good. If you do like Enneagrams, it's a personality test. It helps you to be able to see and understand self and where you should go. And then obviously Myers-Briggs is also the same thing. Like these things really do help you to be able to understand self and where you should go, and combining them and working through those with a coach is really important, because like, okay, I could just take the Enneagram, cool. But if you could go through the Enneagram with the coach and do a couple of lessons with the coach, and I actually know someone, it's an organization called Boy Joy that works with it does coaching with high schoolers specifically. And so definitely look up that boyjoy.org. They work specifically with high schoolers in coaching, because it should start there. It should start even in elementary and stuff like that. And there's actually a school here in Charlotte, North Carolina that is trying out coaching for their students, and being able to see that difference already, that, oh, not just the counselor, but also having a coach for a student to be able to further understand themselves. And it's only for their seniors right now, but it's really, really beneficial. It's going well. That helps to take the test, but also, this is what I've been thinking about. You know what I mean? When you take your Enneagram and talk to it with your coach. And the difference between a coach and a therapist is a coach is always about present and future forward, and a therapist is about the past. The therapist, we talk about deep rooted stuff like past, like the roots and stuff like that. Think about like the therapist is about like a lot of the things that is below the dirt, and a coach is helping you to grow those new leaves. Think about it from that perspective. Yeah.
We at 11:28. I told you, man. I told you we go. I told you. So, yeah, Cal, we don't want to take up too much of your time, Mario. We obviously another part 2. We got to do a part 2, Cal, with Mario.
I'm definitely fine with that. Yeah.
But just get our final questions in, the final thoughts, whatever. Okay, Cal, you lead it. Mario, before we go, brother, thank you so much. Go ahead.
No problem. No problem at all. I had a good time in conversation with y'all. This was pretty dope. This was dope.
Yeah. No, I mean, my question, my brother, because I mean, you said a lot of valid, very valuable information and feedback for the people. And I would just ask, my last question would really be, before we end it out, how can not only we support you, but how can we support Black men and men of color in the classroom?
Yeah.
You know, like, as far as like, you know, you run a program, which is great, so they definitely can join Messy Roots, and I just salute that. Outside of Messy Roots, just like, what can people do as families, as communities, as parents, as colleagues, to support Black men in those spaces?
Yeah, I think again, that's the connectedness that we begin to continue to talk about, and that's something that I'm doing Messy Roots, because we serve male leaders of color in our organization, and we don't just focus on educators. And one of the cool things too is that we do coaching, and people. Yeah, I love it, and that people are try to emulate the coaching platform that I created with Profound Gentlemen. Like, how did you do that? And so I twisted it up a little bit with Messy Roots to be able to create a more unique model and take it to the next level. And so there are so many guys who are like, you know what? We're not even going to focus on your like creating coaches with our organization. We're going to pay you all to coach our folks. We're just going to do that. And so we're seeing more and more of that. And so I say that to continue to support amazing organizations and the connectedness of all of these organizations. So there is an organization called Bond. There's New York City Man Teach. There is He Is Me Institute. There's also Summer House Institute. There are so many amazing Black male educating organizations that we continue to connect with and partner with, and I'm grateful, because that's what's making this an amazing experience. And then another thing that I'm starting to see is there are so many in-house um, groups now, because the reach is sometimes limited. So I'm seeing even in DC they have their own Black Male Educator Initiative for their guys. But to connect with other programs is going to be the key. I think, like, again, the connectedness, we have to figure out how to continue to connect organizations, because we are connected in any way. And so to acknowledge and be intentional about it will help us even take it to the next level. So that's what I would say. Yeah. So messyroots.org is my work. And Mario, as well as MarioJovan.com for the coaching and the mastermind pieces.
No, man, Mario, you got me at a point where I'm processing all this information, man. To be honest, I mean, I got homework to do. Pretty much, I got homework to do.
Hard work, homework.
Yeah. Hard work.
Yeah, hard work. I have hard work to do. That's so good.
I haven't really. Oh man, no, we got to do part 2. We just got to do a part 2.
Yeah.
Just thank you, brother. I don't have any final questions, Kyle. You nailed it with that one. What I will do is do my hard work and homework. I will definitely share with you, because there's some challenges that I'm dealing with young people already. I'm figuring it out and processing it. But I'll say this: do I have your permission? I know it's probably a yes anyway, but do I have your permission to refer some of these young people? Like, what's your age demographic in your organization?
Yeah, I work with high schoolers, and people are like, we would love for you to work with some high schoolers even more. My typical group are those that are college students and above, and that's why I mentioned Boy Joy. They're definitely an organization located in Philly now, and they are definitely an organization that focus primarily more on that aspect.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. So
family, I know he listed a lot. We'll definitely have him down.
Yeah.
In the comment box, all the websites and links he listed. May post some here in the video as well. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I have nothing else to say. Final words. Any final words? Well, I would say I'll lead it off. Thank you, Mario, for your time. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for putting that work in. Thank you for the analogy on the plants and the seeds. I plant seed. My mom it's funny you mentioned my mom used to have a whole bunch of plants and everything around the house. The trees that you said, how it's the energy and it's the vibration. I learned a lot, brother. Thank you so much. And then what you did also, because there's so much I learned, but I'm just going to, just address 2 of them. The other thing that you shared with me that was very impactful and taught me was how powerful our stories are. I thought it was just me sharing my story, because I usually, as far as my organization, I go back to its originality and stuff like that. I just thought that was a part of my marketing and promotion to let them know about marketing. But I never really connected how much of an impact it has even on a personal level, and how that impacts not only the colleagues that I work with, but just I didn't even realize just how we meet people, right? Like for example, when I'm going too long, but how we started this podcast, when what I started to feel spiritually was, it's great meeting new people, man. It's great learning about other people and just hearing their stories. This is great. This is so wonderful. So just thank you, brother. Thank you for the work you put in.
No problem.
Teaching me.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Those are my final words right there, man.
No problem. All right, then. This is good.
So Mario, my brother, again, we appreciate you. We love the work you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
My brother, because you put out the love. So you're definitely gonna get that back more so, because you're putting that into your work, into your purpose, and that's beautiful, brother. And we wanted to salute you and bring you on the platform, share that with the people, because they need to know you exist. And we always talk about what's wrong with these youth? What's wrong with these, these teachers and all this other stuff? It's like, no. People are doing the work to get this thing in order, because the system was not built for us to be productive in. But we're finding ways, like you said with the plant, we're finding ways to survive, and not just survive, but thrive and be nurtured, to nurture each other and connect. So that's beautiful, brother. And that's why we brought you to connect, nurture, survive, thrive, all that. You know what I'm saying?
I love that. I love that.
Man.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, brother.
Yeah. So any final words, Mario, you want to leave?
Yeah,
with
no. continue to do the work and stuff is so important. And then you could follow my work on social media on all platforms. It's Mario Jovan, and then as for the website is mariojovan.com, and then messyroots.org.
Thank you so much. So here we're gonna do the final 3, 2, 1 peace on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1 peace.